All right, let's talk Chargers Texans. So I already made a video talking about CJ Stroud and how I think he could try and attack this Chargers defense and how it might be difficult because the Chargers defense is very good. But I do think that the Texans defense is very underrated and could give Herbert some troubles. Would it be enough to pull off the upset and get the Texans to win this game? Well, let's get into it. We're going to get into some numbers, some charts, and then we'll watch some film. And finally, at the end of this video, I will give my prediction as to who I have winning. So first, let's look at some just PFF grades of positional categories, help familiarize us with how these teams are. You see that PFF very impressed with Herbert this year, third highest graded passer in the league that the team is as a whole, but that's all Herbert. The coverage is 11th for the Texans, so coverage is very good. Receiving has actually been maybe better than you would think for the Chargers. It's currently at 16th, which is middle of the pack. There's 32 teams, so there you go. Although a decent chunk of that is like Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer are both like solid, so that helps. Another big part of it is they don't play as many wide receivers as other teams do, and they don't run as many routes as other teams do. So they don't necessarily have the depth, but a lot of times they don't have their depth players play that much, which helps out the overall PFF grade. The pass blocking has been very good, 7th best. Pass rush has been very good for the Texans, 11th best. So good on good there. We'll see if the Texans can get any pressure there. Usually when it's tied, that favors the offense. When it's low, and then when it's bad, then that favors the defense. So should be in favor of the Chargers there. Running. This is interesting because the Chargers have this perception of being such a run-heavy team. You look at the PFF grades, hasn't been outstanding. 21st ranked run blocking, 29th ranked rushing. That's just purely running the football. While a lot of people like some of the running backs the Chargers have, PFF isn't as crazy about them. The Texans are middle of the pack in terms of run defense. However, if you use EPA, that's estimated points added per play, which is an interesting stat to use. It essentially uses game situations to determine it's almost like a passer rating, but for both running and passing, and it's kind of better at it, I would say. So it's an interesting little stat to use. You see the Chargers, it's right around what the PFF grades would say, 18th best rush EPA. The Texans, though, they are 6th best defensively. So the Texans, while maybe the PFF grades say they're okay, this says they're actually really good. So whatever you want to believe, the reality is they don't give up too much on the ground, and this is an advantage for Houston. Now you might think, well, wait a second, the Chargers love to run the football, right? So couldn't this be an issue? Well, actually, I'm not sure if this will fit next to me, so I might just put this over my whole head, but you see the pass frequency over expected for the Chargers. On the top bar, you see all plays is -1. So okay, they do technically run the ball a little bit more than expected, but barely. And what this is, it's factoring situations. So, in this situation, the average team runs it this amount, they run it less or more. So you see, they do run the ball a lot more on a 2nd down and 1 and a 3rd down and 1 and 2. They pretty much always run the ball in those situations. But other than that, they're pretty even and actually throw the ball on a 2nd down and 8 more than the average team does. So that's something worth noting. They're also much more likely to run the ball after they pass for a 1st down. That's also interesting. So now let's talk. My last chart I'm going to use here is going to be for the passing game before we get into some film, because as I said, running game might not be great in this for the Chargers. They don't actually run the ball as much as people think they do, but still a part of their game. It might come down to how well they can throw the football here if they're going to win. You see Ladd McConkey, really good against man coverage and still solid against zone. He's kind of their key guy. Quentin Johnston has the most insane gap I've ever seen in doing this. I've never seen someone be this good against zone and this bad against man. I mean, look at that. Below 50 PFF grade in less than half a yard per route ran when he's playing man coverage. It jumps up to nearly 80 when he's going up against zone and a 1.96 yards per route ran against zone. That's crazy that he has that much of a jump. And he's usually, he's not always getting the number 1 corner because McConkey takes on some of those. Although a lot of times Johnston will be on the outside, so he will get number 1 corners. But still, that's crazy. That's one of the more shocking things I've seen. So we'll notice that. Joshua Palmer's kind of good against both. Will Dissly is much better against zone. He has a big gap as well, really good against zone, but he's more of a role player. He's not out there every snap, so that's part of that you'll see more of when it's not someone who is in theory the number 2 option, right? J.K. Dobbins has pretty similar yards per route ran, although his PFF grade is much better. I mean, it's 32. Very little snaps against man coverage. A lot of times he's blocking when there's man coverage, so that's part of that. And Stone Smart, also a really big jump when he goes from man to zone. Again, another role player who doesn't get a lot of playing time against man. But you look down the list, pretty much everybody is better when they're playing zone, except for Ladd McConkey. So, okay, when it's man, we throw to Ladd McConkey. When it's zone, we can throw it around. That's how they've been successful all year, why they're in the playoffs. Here's the issue with that. Getting into the film, okay, the Texans have a really good corner. So you're going to see right here, this is in the slot. You have Tyreek Hill playing, as a slot receiver, but it doesn't matter because the Texans are still putting their number 1 corner here, Derek Stingley, on him. While it's possible they won't put Stingley on McConkey, I think it'd be a massive mistake. And if that doesn't happen, that probably would cost you the game. So, okay, one-on-one matchup. You see Tua takes the snap. He's saying, hey, Tyreek Hill one-on-one. Let's throw it there. Right here, Stingley looks like he's the guy running this route, not Tyreek Hill. So this is an issue if you're trying to rely on your number 1 receiver against the Texans. They got an all-pro candidate corner, Derek Stingley. Stingley gets an interception right here. So, I mean, you have to trust Herbert wouldn't have made that throw, right? That's kind of the thing. Like, that was, I would trust Tua doesn't make that throw. That was a bad job by him. Usually he doesn't make that mistake. But as a whole, if you're taking away McConkey, that changes things. Usually what the Texans like to do is they play zone coverage on first and second down, and then if it's an obvious passing situation, they'll play man on third. So going over here, this is a third down, but it's against the Broncos, who are playing zone here. This might be what the Chargers have to do more of, is just throw the ball more on first and second down, which, as we established, they will do. That's the concept they're running. It's designed to, as I kind of mentioned, they have a lot of guys who can just run solid routes against zone. The one I've circled is the one they're going to try and get open. As you see, Herbert takes the snap. He's going to look over in this direction. He fires in this direction, and you see there is a window there. To me, I think this is what we're going to see a lot of with the Chargers. I think we're going to see them maybe play a little bit more aggressive here, even though usually when you are the quote-unquote favorites, what they say you want to do is be a little bit more cautious. Don't lose the game. I actually think here it might make more sense to play a bit more aggressive. As you see, Palmer's able to make the grab, kicks up a big gain right there. There was a defensive offsides as well, so made it easier for them. But still, as a whole, this is what you look at, right? This is I think the key way that you want to do things if you're the Chargers. Now, heading over here, it's not like they can't cover. It's not like the Texans are screwed if they are playing zone coverage and the Chargers throw the ball. Like, as of right here, you see this situation. It's going to be a zone coverage concept. You see the route on the screen. Herbert takes a snap. He's once again looking for Joshua Palmer. Herbert makes a nice throw, but it was a little bit too far to the inside and really well defended by Denver there. They weren't able to get the completion, and therefore, it has a 4th down and 3. So this is how things can get interesting for me. For the Chargers, I think that you're not in a great situation when you're in obvious passing situations. You might want to throw the ball more in obvious running situations because then you have the better matchup. But of course, you are still going to have to run from time to time because otherwise the Texans will just play man coverage the whole time and let their pass rushers try and get after you. It's not an ideal situation. And then, of course, there is the X factor, which is just like Herbert's really good. And like sometimes in these previews, I kind of forget to talk about the quarterbacks because there's so much else going on. But like this play, it's a zone coverage play. Herbert's going to take the snap. He looks down the field and you see right off the bat, doesn't love what he sees over the middle, but the offensive line is blocking well. So watch him and ultimately get outside the pocket, finally finds an open player who kind of, once the play broke down, ran down the field. They're able to get a completion. The Herbert factor is another real thing. Just because you cover a play right away does not mean that the play is dead. Herbert can do things like this. So ultimately, I do think the Texans have a coverage that could work against the Chargers. I think you put Stingley on McConkey and you play man coverage, they should be able to do all right. And I think they should be able to stop the run pretty well. So like, that's a good chunk of options that you can kind of take away. The issue, though, is that the other thing you like to do, which is play zone coverage on first and second down, they could struggle. And I think best case scenario for this Texans team is if they stop the run so well that the Chargers aren't able to kind of get going, and then they just abandon the run, and then you can really, I think, defend the pass well. I just don't know if that's going to happen, especially because for that to happen, the Chargers would have to probably be down like multiple scores, and I think that it's unlikely that that's going to happen. And even if the Chargers get down multiple scores, I think they're still going to run enough early on to open things up. So as a whole, I don't know if this is going to be a dominant Chargers offensive performance, but for my predictions on this side of the ball, so the Chargers on offense this season have 2.2 points per drive. The Texans' defensive points per drive is 1.99, so I'm going to kind of guess right in the middle of that. I'm going to go with 2.1 points per drive. That feels right around fair for me. So this means my final score prediction, if it's a 12-possession game, I'm expecting a lot of possessions because I think there could be some short possessions here. I'm going to go with Chargers 25, Texans 20. I think the Texans' game plan, if you didn't watch my last video, will be to throw the ball down the field a lot, see if they can get some chunk plays that way. The Chargers might have more of the methodical approach, but I think they could be aggressive here a little bit as well. We could weirdly get a decent amount of aggressiveness, despite the fact that I think it could be a lower points per drive game, if that makes sense. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on all of this. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.